Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of the saga that is my family and the Jehovah's Witness and my waking up from it. So to kind of pick up where I left off in part 2, if you watched it, if you haven't, there's a part 1 and a part 2 to this story. So if you're interested, you may want to go back and watch those and to kind of stay up to speed on what I'm talking about. So where I left off was with my mom and dad's divorce being kind of like official, like, you know, where they filed for divorce and we're going ahead. So my mom, just to kind of make sure that I'm, you know, letting you guys know what's going on in the congregation at the same time as all this. My dad had snatched me up off the street and brought me home with the complete blessing of the elders and the circuit overseer. Everyone in the congregation knew what he was doing. They thought my mom was an evil bitch, and she was definitely the bad guy, and they were completely fine with what my dad had done and was planning on doing. And I mean, everyone knew that he was just going to go down there and snatch me off the street. So my mom had told me that I didn't have to talk to the elders. You know, she was still a witness too. She was very, very much indoctrinated. So this must have been hard for her. But I think that she also knew, just because of all her dealings with the elders in our congregation and trying to get help with her marital problems and going to the one place where she was told she was allowed to go, which was the elders. And just being told over and over again that it's your fault that you get hit. She had a great deal of distrust and dislike of these men, and she was sick of it. So I think that's why she was telling me, you know, you don't have to talk to the elders. But because she knew it was going to be in that congregation, but she still was totally Jehovah's Witness. But she was more in like survival mode, you know, at that time. So, like within a day or two, what do you think happened? I went to my grandparents' house and there were elders sitting there. And I remember they put a chair in the middle of my grandparents' living room, and then they all sat around me. Like it was like I was being interrogated, and I was 9. So I'm sitting in this like kitchen chair in the middle of the living room floor. Just fucking creepy, right? And weird. And here's these men, all these old guys with suits on, you know. So tell us, what did your mom tell you? What, you know, they were, you know, milking me for information about my mother so that they could try and disfellowship her. That is exactly what they were doing. And I didn't want to talk to them. And I just remember my mom telling me that I didn't have to. And I didn't say a word. And I just started to cry. And my dad, who's standing in the kitchen behind them, says, "Your mom tell you not to talk to them?" And I just started to cry more. And then my dad's mad. He's turned around, he's angry, you know, that I won't talk to the elders. Just a really, really mean thing to do to a 9-year-old who's going through a lot, you know. So we continue to go to the Kingdom Hall, the one that I had grown up in. My dad got me back into school, and my teacher had been a teacher a grade before, first and second, and then she was my teacher in 3rd grade too. So she loved me. She was really, really nice. Because it was such a messy battle, I had to have a guardian ad litem. And the guardian ad litem chosen by the court just happened to be my school counselor, who everyone in my school knew. He was a really, really nice guy. His name was Steve, and he was really, really sweet. And he went through a lot because of my family and because of me. So around this time, my dad just was, you know, feeding me lots of information about my mom and about how what she was doing was against, you know, our religious beliefs. And when I was with my mom, she wasn't really feeding me any information at all. She was acting differently. She had like a boyfriend, and she got a job, and she was dressing differently. Like, she kind of went through this phase right after she left my dad and wasn't going to the kingdom all the time, where she was like wearing things that were a little bit sexy, which I thought was satanic. How dare you wear a skirt that, comes to your knees? You must be a whore, things like that. But she was kind of changing, doing things that I knew were against our religion, and my dad hadn't changed at all. And he was actively trying to turn me against her, which was very, very easy for him to do. On top of all of that, I was daddy's girl, and I was a devout Jehovah's Witness. I was so devout. So with my mom, kind of her actions not lining up with what she had taught me my whole life, it was very, very easy for her to become the bad guy. So I decided that this was all her fault, and now I hate her. And when I would have my visits with her, I would run away, I'd crawl out my window, and, at midnight, get my bag and crawl out the window, and then walk down to a payphone, 9, 10 years old, and call my grandma and ask her to come get me. Like, I did a lot of really, really bad things happen. Her and me screamed at each other. We would fight. All of my time with her was spent arguing. And it was miserable. It was just miserable. And she didn't always handle herself very well. Of course, I didn't handle myself well because I was a little kid. So, the stakes with me were extremely low. But now looking back, I don't know what was going on in her head, because she didn't handle me or any of that with grace at all. And you know what? I mean, I get it. I get it. Coming from where she had come from, finally getting some freedom. When she got this job, she was working in an apartment complex, and she was living there. And I worked in that industry for about 5 years. Those people really become friends, the people that work, in that industry. And she had never had friends, really. I mean, so she was finally she was like living the life that I lived when I was 20, but she was 35, So her life was changing. And then here, my dad is a complete asshole, and all of her friends at the Kingdom Hall had written letters for my dad against her, just making shit up about what a horrible person she was. And then I would come over, and my dad had brainwashed me against her. And so I was being a high and mighty little brat. I understand. I'm not going to excuse what she said and did to me, but God, that was a lot on her plate. Both of my parents went through a lot back then. So my mom lost in this custody thing, and basically, I mean, it went on for years. It went on and on and on and on. Their divorce was pretty much done, but the custody thing was just a never ending. It was just never ever going to stop. And they finally were getting ready to go to trial, and my guardian ad litem and both of the attorneys were telling me to get ready, because I was going to have to go to court and pick which parent I wanted to live with, and I was going to have to say that in front of my parents. I had already my dad had coerced me into writing letters to the courts, which I had done. And in order to make my dad happy, sometimes I would make things up, about my mom, because I knew that what he wanted from me was information about her. So I would just kind of make shit up sometimes. And I had to write all this stuff down, and he took it to court. So I wrote letters against my mother when I was 9 years old. So yeah, that was kind of rough. The times that I did spend with my mom, we sometimes had fun. She really tried hard. She buy me stuff. She'd, take me swimming, try to do fun stuff. But the poison from my dad and the Jehovah's Witness congregation that we were going to, I mean, it was she was never going to win. Um, so once they got to the point where they're like, we're going to trial, my mom and my dad's lawyers both realized that my parents were out of money because they had sold everything that they owned, and they had nothing anymore. And they brought them together and said, you guys have to settle because you can't afford to go to trial. These lawyers are monsters. They took everything. They took everything. And then right when they realized that my parents didn't have anything left to give, they told them to settle. Just evil bastards. Anyway. So they settled. There was no way I was going to go live with my mom. So she, okay, go ahead, and kind of gave up on the custody thing. My dad got custody of me. So because of everything though, she wasn't going to the Kingdom Hall, and all I wanted in the world was to be a Jehovah's Witness. And I was being poisoned even at the Kingdom Hall by her so-called former friends and my grandparents and everyone. It was just really, it was a no-win situation for her. So I refused to go to my visitation with her, which was like every other weekend, and there kind of came a point where she didn't want me to come either, because all we did was scream and fight with each other, and I was very openly trying to be difficult so that I didn't have to come see her anymore, just like I said, running away or trying to embarrass her, or I was being awful. I was being awful on purpose because I didn't want to come over, didn't want to be there with her. So I was shunning her, kind of. My dad, like, she hadn't been disfellowshipped or anything like that, and she wasn't really doing anything to be disfellowshipped for. She doesn't really drink. I think she's been drunk like one time. She doesn't like to drink. She didn't smoke. She didn't do drugs. She wasn't having sex. Well, I don't know if she's having sex, but like, she wasn't like sleeping around or anything. At least, my mom just isn't that kind of a person. She's kind of a homebody and kind of like a I just like to be by myself kind of person anyway. So anyway, my dad had met this woman at a circuit assembly, and he hadn't like actually met her. She was a witness that her and her ex-husband and my mom and dad had met and been to a dinner party together like years like before I was born. So my dad knew her already, and her husband had just recently been caught cheating on her, and he was disfellowshipped, and he divorced her, and he left the religion, and he went and married his woman that he was sleeping with. So here she is. It's so weird, right? Like, in a situation like that, it's like, oh my God, we have to get you married off. Isn't that weird? It's almost like polygamous, how no one can be single. Like, a woman just needs to be with, married off as quickly as possible. So here's my dad, like, they hadn't actually even settled everything with his divorce yet. And somebody who knew the two of them was like, oh, you have to meet. Come, she's single. She needs a husband, and you need a wife. So come on. So isn't that just, it's so weird. Like, their divorce was the most traumatizing thing that had ever happened to me. Their divorce, being kidnapped, fighting with my mother, the elders coming over and trying to interrogate me. Like, it was just crazy. Losing my house. My dog died. I can't think of, it's like a sad country song. So anyway, I came into if anyone's from the Washington area, it was the Puyallup Circuit Assembly Hall. So in that back room where the food was and everything. I went back. I had been with my little girlfriends or whatever, and I was 11, and I came into the cafeteria looking for my dad, and I saw him sitting next to this woman, and she was all smiles, and she was a kind of witness, like those people who are like impossibly happy, and like I have always had an ability to really see through that. I People who are really happy, you can tell. People who are faking being really happy, you can't always tell. But with her, I knew she was all over me immediately, and all smiles and giggles, and trying to be cute, and it was just really weird. And I immediately distrusted her, because I knew that she was fraudulent. She was fake, and she immediately needed her face to be in my face. Like she did a horrible job at meeting me for the first time, and just in our subsequent relationship for years and years to come. Yeah, she's a fake. So I saw him sitting there with her and all of these people that I didn't really know, and I was horrified because I knew what was happening. They were trying to marry my dad off, and what I was really hoping was that my dad was going to be able to get an apartment, and that him and me could move into that, because we were still living with my grandparents. I wanted some time with just me and my dad, and I was really, really looking forward to that. And I could see him here getting ready to marry someone. I just knew it immediately. It's amazing how kids can just tell some things. So anyway, the problem was that my dad was not scripturally free. But even though he had told me many times that, my mom, she dresses like such a slut now, I'm sure that she's, I'm sure I'm free. Here's the other thing that was kind of going on at that time. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this term, emotional incest. But that is what my dad was doing to me. Not a sexual thing. I was never sexually abused, which I'm extremely grateful for. But emotional incest is where one parent, they turn the child into like a surrogate spouse, and they overshare, and they expect to get emotional validation, and just validation in general from that child. And they have the kind of relationship emotionally that they would have with a spouse. So my dad was not so much a father as he was a friend at that point. And my dad shared with me throughout the divorce. He let me read all the letters. He let me read everything. And it was just really, really inappropriate for me to see all of that stuff. I was a little kid. I mean, I had to grow up quickly after all this stuff started. So he didn't really discipline me at that point. He shared a lot of things with me, like about his sex life with my mom, which were really, really inappropriate. And I wish I would have told, because I had a therapist back then, court ordered. I wish I would have told my therapist that, because that was really, really inappropriate. He way overshared, and he played it off as like, oh, we have such this special daddy-daughter relationship. And it really wasn't a daddy-daughter relationship. It was me becoming a crutch for him, an emotional crutch, which left very little for me, left over for me. And I was getting nothing. I literally was there to validate my dad's feelings, and be empathic for him. And still to this day, what he has done to me, as far as like the empathy, the empathic feelings that I have about him, where I feel what he feels. I know exactly what he thinks. It's really been damaging to me, because you kind of get to this place where it's not so much about you, it's all about that parent, and supporting them and helping them and thinking ahead about, how you can make things easier, better for them. And so that's what was happening to me. And I saw that my dad was with this woman, and that meant I was not needed anymore. Doesn't that sound weird? It is. It is weird, but honestly, that's kind of where I was put because of that whole that relationship that we had. So anyway, she had two children, a boy that was my same age and a daughter that was a few years older than me. And they had a house, and my dad was living, sleeping on the floor in his dad's den, and had been sleeping there for a couple of years now. And this woman was gonna make him look good at the Kingdom Hall because she's so bouncy and, glassy eyed and weird. And it really didn't matter if it was good for me or not. So my dad decided that he needed proof. He needed proof that he needed to get married to her immediately. And he could not wait for me to be ready. It was not about me. It's all about him. So he called my mom and took her to lunch. And the whole point of this conversation was to get her to tell him that she had had sex with somebody else so that he could get married. So my mom had not had any sexual relationships, but she told him that she had been raped recently. And it was by somebody who worked like a vendor or something for her apartment complex that she was working at, came into her house and raped her at night. And she had invited him in because she knew him, but she did not invite him in for sex. And I guess he kind of showed up at the door. And, my mom was an idiot back then. Would she do that now? Absolutely not. But when you're a sheltered little Jehovah's Witness, you're like, oh, look, it's my friend. She made she made the decision to let him in. Now, her making that decision doesn't mean that she deserved to be raped. I'm just saying that she didn't know him as well as she should have if she was going to let him come into her house. And maybe she would also wonder why he was there so late at night. Like, I would not do that. But this is what happens when you lead such a sheltered life. So she was pretty upset about it and scared. And he, worked with her and was in her vicinity a lot, and she didn't know what to do. And my dad said, "Did you scream?" I'm not going to share the answers to these questions, but he asked her if she screamed. And he asked her if she called the police. Instead of saying, "Are you okay? What can I do to help you?" It was the questions that an elder would ask. By the way, my dad had lost his position as a ministerial servant at this point because of the divorce and everything that was going on, obviously, which he hated my mom for too. So anyway, he came home from that and told me that he had had lunch with my mom and told me that she got raped. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, but she let him in the middle of the night in her nightie. And, of course he was going to have sex with her. And, look at what she's wearing that. And she let him in. And, he didn't give a shit that she was raped. It was all about what she was wearing, right? And that at the time seemed perfectly reasonable to me because I was a little kid and incredibly indoctrinated. And I was like, yeah, and you know what? That's really a bad thing to tell a little girl, right? Who in a few years is going to be in a position where maybe that could happen to her. And maybe that could happen to her now. That's not the kind of thing that you should tell your daughter about. Well, what were you wearing? Oh, sounds like you deserved it. That's anyway, that was my feeling too. It was like, yeah. I mean, You know, if you're not going to be covered from here to here, then yeah, of course she's getting raped. It's totally her own fault. It's her own fault that she got raped. And you know what? I bet she liked it. It was just really, really horrible. So my dad was like, yay, I can get remarried. He didn't want to call the cops. He didn't tell her maybe she should go to a hospital. It's just, fuck you, I'm getting married, right? And so he went to the elders and the circuit overseer and said, this is what she told me. And they were like, all right, cool, you're free to get remarried. So my dad immediately was married, like within months. Within months they were married. It was one of the hardest things that ever happened to me, because I was, you know, in the town that I was from originally, living with my grandparents, going to my same school, going to my same Kingdom Hall. All of these things were the same. I mean, was not in my house, but I was in my same environment. And the woman that he married lived like, you know, 20 miles away. So I had to leave my grandparents' house, which was the last home that I really had. My school, I had to change schools. I had to go to a new Kingdom Hall and move to a town that I didn't know anything about. And it was just probably the most traumatic things that had happened. It was horrible. Yeah, I was, again, it was like as soon as his divorce was final, he was signing a marriage license with her. And you know, it was hard on her kids too, because they had just dealt with a divorce where their dad left them to go live with another woman and her kids. And one of her kids had the same name as my stepbrother, and they were the same age. And he had just like, I'm gone, bye. I'm marrying her and gonna be a dad to these kids now. Screw you. I mean, they went through a lot too. And then here come me and my dad. Like we're friggin' strangers, right? So they had it rough. They had it rough too. So my mom didn't know that my dad was getting remarried until like the day before he was getting married. And she found out that he took that information about her rape and used it to free himself spiritually. And she was like, she was horrified. She was horrified because that meant that he was going to put me in a new situation that was going to scare me and be damaging and for me, which she could not have been more right about. And B, she was going to be disfellowshipped. It was just a matter of time, right? And she knew that if she was disfellowshipped, I would never speak to her again, or at least until I woke up. She's right about that, because she also wasn't going to the Kingdom Hall at this time. Sorry. Oh, you should see my teacup. Little cat. Isn't it cute? Anyway, sorry. So the night before the wedding, my mom put a box of stuff together and overnighted it to my grandparents with gifts for me. Had a blanket and a stuffed animal and 2 CDs. It was La Bouche, that la da da dee da 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 da, that one, that CD, and a Celine Dion CD, which was really, really popular that year. I think it was 96. And a blanket and a stuffed animal and a card, because she knew I was about to be in hell, and just telling me how much she loved me and missed me, and you know, that she knew that things would be kind of hard right now, but just hang on, you know, you'll get through it. And they were. So she called one of the elders at, I don't know if it was in our congregation or the one that was in the area where like her publisher card had been moved to the congregation by these apartments that she was living and working at. So she called an elder and she said, he is not free to get remarried. I was raped. I told him I was raped. He's not free to be remarried. And so, but it was like the day before. So my mom, my dad and my stepmom got married the next day, and they immediately went on their honeymoon. And I came back to my grandparents' house. It was like, you know, one of the last nights that I got to be in my home, and there was that package. But when my dad and his new wife got back from their honeymoon, And we moved into the house there, my stepmom's house. That's when the elders started coming to them like, you're not free. She says that she was raped, and this is the this is about to get real convoluted, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try to make it easy to understand. So the elders and the congregation that we were now in, which was my stepmom's congregation, they were coming to them saying, you guys are not free. And they had been, this whole marriage and everything had been approved by the elders in our old congregation, and that circuit overseer, which I believe was also, anyway, because of this, that circuit overseer was severely punished. I don't know if he had to be, like, if he was removed. The elder body at the old congregation were in huge trouble. And my dad and his wife were now in huge trouble because they were now adulterers. Because my mom had, you know, said the right thing to the right person. I don't know what my dad could have, they were free, you know, like they were already approved. I don't know why they came down on him so hard. But anyway, so my mom had some elders meetings with elders in her area, and she told them the whole story, and they believed her, and they weren't jerks to her. I guess they were pretty nice about it, and like, we're really sorry that this happened. All of the elders at our original congregation had to call my mom on the phone and apologize to her. That was part of their punishment, I guess. Was my mom has told me about it, that they all had to call her and apologize, and she just was laughing the whole time. She thought it was so funny. It was really weird. So then my dad and my stepmom started getting called into elders meetings for like this long series of elders meetings, and it always happened after Tuesday night meeting, which was our like theocratic ministry school and all that. So one night, my step siblings, they would like sit in the front row, you know, and like talk and chat and laugh and but I would sit next to the door of the back room on the floor and just listen. And I heard them being disfellowshipped. And my dad and my stepmom came out. They said, come on, kids, let's go. And I flashed a look at the elder that disfellowshipped them, who was always trying to be my friend, you know, like, hey, how's it going? Trying to like yuck it up with me. And he's, hey, if you ever want to talk, you know, you can't. And I looked at him like, oh my God, if looks could kill, you would be like a little smoldering pile of ashes right now. I never spoke to those elders ever again. So they were disfellowshipped. My dad was disfellowshipped because, in this elder's exact words, he was like Achan. And my stepmom was disfellowshipped because she was like Achan's wife. Like, my dad was this horrible perpetrator, and Achan's wife helped him cover it up. Even though my stepmom was free to be remarried. Her husband had committed adultery, admittedly, and was disfellowshipped and remarried. So she was completely free. But and you know what? That's just what I kind of heard. Who knows what they really did? My dad and my stepmom are so freaking devious. And they're such liars. Like, maybe there was more to it. I don't know, but this is what I heard. So anyway, then I was really mad at my mom, because my dad being disfellowshipped was just like the worst thing that could have happened to me, because we had this very close relationship, and I felt it with him. I think I felt it worse because I was so young and so incapable of understanding how feelings work, and that bad feelings don't last forever. So to me, it was like someone had just taken a knife and stabbed me right in the heart. And I don't know if he really deserved to be disfellowshipped. I don't believe in it anymore, so it doesn't really matter to me. But it hurt me pretty bad when he was disfellowshipped. So this video has been about 35 minutes long. I'm going to stop right here and pick it up with part 4 So look for that if you're interested. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you've made it this far, congratulations. So hopefully I will see you in part 4. Bye.